Hey everyone, Gary here from Echidna Sewing, and today we're going to be taking a look at the VMA V-A2S industrial straight stitch machine. So an industrial machine, and who would want to have one of these in your sewing room? Well, I have to tell you, if you've ever had the opportunity to sew on a high-speed straight stitch industrial machine, you'll know why, because they're just so amazingly good to sew on. And this particular model is a really good value proposition, and I'm going to run through all the benefits of it and why it's good to have in your sewing room. We've already done a video just recently on how to actually assemble the stand and get to this point, so you can watch that if you haven't already done so. But if you're just interested to know why you might want one of these machines, this is the right video to be watching, and I'm going to go through everything right now. So let's get into it. A lot of people often think you'd never know how to use an industrial machine, but honestly, they're really, really simple. And the first thing we might do is go through the general machine and the configuration of the machine, so you understand how it actually works. Now, of course, they are bigger than a standard sewing machine, and they're much more powerful, but it's only a straight stitch machine. And so it doesn't do zigzag, it doesn't do buttonholes, it does nothing like that at all. But let's face it, the bulk of most people's sewing, dressmaking, quilting, all that sort of thing is going to be a quality straight stitch requirement, and that's where these guys really do stand alone. But the machine itself is bigger than your standard domestic sewing machine. The difference now in most of our industrial machines, particularly like all the ones we sell actually, there's no longer that big bulky motor underneath the bench, which in the old days was kind of a pain in the backside, so to speak. These days they all have a really, really high-powered servo motor built in right here. So the motor on this machine is actually in the arm of the machine, nothing under the bench at all, which makes it a whole lot easier to set up and for us to ship around and just better in the home, really. The machine sits in the bench and it does tilt back. So the first thing we're going to do is show you how you would actually put the oil into one of these machines, because they do have an oil sump, so they're self-oiling, which is kind of cool. I will tip it back, and there is a little prong on the back of the bench here that sort of rests the machine on. Now, because they do weigh, 30 odd kilograms, there's something that you just got to handle with care and not do anything silly. But tipping the machine back is just a case of rocking it back on its hinges and letting it sit there like that. And that exposes the underbelly of the machine. And we'll just quickly look at the anatomy of the machine, so to speak. You'll notice there's this little guy here, that's the oil pump, and that sits in an oil sump down here, and once we fill that with oil, that pump will be submersed. A little bit of foam packaging there, we'll just get rid of that. It is a brand new machine, haven't sewn on this one yet. So that will sit in the oil, and that will pump oil up through the machine and onto all the wicks, the felt wicks that carry the oil to the various parts of the machine. There's also a little oil tube that pumps oil into this mechanism here, right across to what we call the hook mechanism, the rotary hook. So it self-oils the rotary hook mechanism, which is really cool. A couple of extra little wicks there that dangle in the oil and suck oil up into the shafts down in that area. But as you can see, all metal construction, of course, metal gears, metal shafts, it's designed to do industrial work. If you're going to use this in a home environment, it's almost impossible that you'd ever wear this machine out, because you would never do enough work on it. So kind of good in that sense. So the first thing we're going to do now is we'll fill the sump with oil, and we might video that and show you how that actually works. And of course, on a once every year or 2 years, you will be able to very easily drain the oil and put fresh oil in. It's a really simple process. So let's take a look at how we do that. Okay, so we're going to put the oil in. Now, there is a little sump plug in the bottom of the aluminium sump here that sits under the machine. It's a good idea if you're doing this for the first time, or you've re-oiled, or you've emptied it, to make sure that is nice and tight and the seal is okay. I'm using one of the screwdrivers that came with the machine there. This oil comes with the machine, but it is just standard white sewing machine oil available from us or any good sewing store. And we'll just take the lid off that, so hopefully our camera will catch this. And we've got a high-low mark on the actual sump itself. So all we do is start pouring the oil in there, and pretty much takes this whole bottle. As long as it's above the low mark, that's all we need. There we go. Yep, all that is in there. So that is our machine has now been oiled. We'll pop that little, and keep this bottle, because if you had to move the machine or something and you wanted to drain the oil, that's very good for putting the oil back into in that case. Now, we've oiled the machine. I now need to, in fact, before I do, we'll just talk about the anatomy a little bit further. So this is the bobbin case here. You do not need to lift the machine back to get the bobbin case out. I'm going to show you how you do that very easily once we put the machine back down, but that is obviously the area that you're going to get to quite frequently. And you will find down in this part of the sump here where the oil is separated, you will find, and it's totally normal and expected, you'll get a light misting of oil spray on that area. That is completely normal, and in fact I want that to happen. That means that the oil is getting through to the high-speed rotary hook. That is the stitch formation mechanism. So that's perfectly normal. So this machine is also an underbed thread trimming machine. That, in other words, it cuts the thread for you, and this little device here is involved with that. That's a solenoid that actually does that for us. But otherwise, not much more you need to know about under here. Not much you'll ever have to do with it. As long as it's got oil in the sump, then you're in good shape. Now, important thing, if you ever have to tip the machine back and then reposition it, because you've changed the oil or you've needed to look under there, this is the most important thing I want to get across, is these machines are heavy. You must keep your hands away from in this area when you're tipping the machine back, because if you have your fingers there and tip this machine back, it will damage your hand severely. So please be totally careful with that. And as long as you keep your hands away from there, and to tip the machine back, we just come to the top of the machine and just simply lay it back down, and the machine is now back in position. It's very easy, but I just stress keeping your hands away from that area when you're doing that. So there we go, we've got oil in the machine. We're now ready to take a bit of a look and a tour on the top of the machine. Okay, so I've got the machine plugged in. I'm going to turn it on. The switch is at the back on the top here. And first thing you'll now notice is it's got a little LCD display. But we'll start from the right-hand side and move across. As mentioned already, the motor that drives this machine is a servo motor that's located in this area here, all nicely enclosed. There's no belts on this machine, so no belts to wear out, get caught, catch anything at all. So that's good. This is the reverse lever here, so we simply push that down to reverse. This is your stitch length dial, and you can go right up to a 5mm long straight stitch on this machine. Coming across, again, we've got the bobbin winding tension post. We're going to wind a bobbin a little later. We have the little oil cap here. Now, when the machine is running, you will see oil splashing up onto this clear cap, and that's an indication to you that the pump is actually working and doing what it's supposed to do. You can, if you wish, you can take that off and put oil through there, but you really never need to. All the oil goes in down the bottom here. This is a little cutting knife for holding and cutting the bobbin thread once you've completed that process. This is your bobbin winding facility. This is one of the thread guides that delivers the thread into the machine. We've got a pre-tension device here, which is part of the tensioning system on the machine. We've got our main tension here. We've got our take-up lever hidden in behind this guardrail. We've got foot pressure adjustment, so you have full control over that by simply turning that dial there. A couple of extra thread guides down to the thread guides on the needle bar itself, and then of course into the needle. This little device here is our light, so I have an LED light built into the machine, and this little button will allow us to basically put the needle down and creep forward a stitch. So, and then I push that. Once we start sewing, you'll see how that works, but it allows you to go one extra stitch without having to push the pedal down. This machine still has its safety guard on, and to be honest, once you're familiar with the machine, I don't know anybody that leaves these on. You can take them off, that's entirely up to you, but they do come standard, and it's a finger guard basically to prevent your fingers getting caught under the needle. And these are very powerful machines. If you get your finger caught under the needle, it will go through your finger. because they're very powerful. But that'll happen on a domestic machine too if you're not careful. So just a bit of common sense needs to be exercised there. Obviously our thread stand is at the back of the machine. I've got a couple of spools of our polycotton coarse spun thread on there. This machine is set up as an apparel machine. So that means the gauge of the needle that is used, it's a very standard needle, a 16x231 or a DBX1, which is a very, very standard industrial needle. And they're generally really more for apparel use. Now, one of the first things people say is, can I use this machine on making handbags or leather or vinyl? And the answer is absolutely you can. It'll do a fantastic job. We just need to make sure we have the right needle for you for that task, and we do carry all that sort of thing. But comes standard set up as basically a standard sort of fabric apparel type machine. What else can I tell you about the top of the machine? We've covered that. You'll notice under here, hopefully camera might just see, down here we've got the knee lever for lifting the presser foot, and we've also got our pedal which goes to the control box under the machine, and they're all adjustable, so you can set them up to your preferred sewing position, as also you can with the height of the machine. So I've got this set at a standard bench height, which is usually okay for most people, but if you want it a bit lower or taller, you can actually do that yourself. So that's it. That's a bit of a rundown on it. Oh, we also have a little convenient tray here on the side, and it's got a little bobbin storage and a needle storage and so on there. And there's also a drawer. I'll just pull this out, a drawer for keeping your accessories in, and I'll pop that back in there. So that sits under there like that. It's a fully apply laminate bench top, so it's not going to sag. It's not chipboard. It won't swell and destroy itself. It's very solid. It's going to last you a long time. And the frame of the stand is all metal and really, really secured together very well. So it's a very sturdy product, as you'd expect it to be for a machine that, you know, weighs what these do. So they're very, very solid, heavy-duty machines. Okay, that's enough of that. We might have a look at how it sews. Well, before we can sew on it, we need to make sure we've got a bobbin thread in the bobbin case. And I'm going to take the bobbin case out of the machine now. Now, you might recall when I had it positioned up, you could see the bobbin case sitting in the hook there. I can actually simply reach under here and feel for the bobbin case and take it out, and there it is. So our bobbin case currently has orange thread on there, and I'm not going to be using orange thread, so I'm going to take that bobbin out, and I'm going to grab one of the bobbins out of the little accessory tray, and it does come with a few spare bobbins and some needles. We do carry these bobbins and all the needles in stock. So it's a standard L-style aluminium straight stitch bobbin, and the bobbin simply goes onto the bobbin spindle just there. And I'm going to now pull this thread down from here. I've got some, as I said, some polycotton coarse spun thread, just a very standard weight thread. And I've already put the thread up through the eyelet on the top just here. And now it's a case of pulling it through and threading it through the various parts here. So I'll just grab my scissors and we'll cut a nice clean end on that. And all we need to do is run the thread through the first little hole here, and then we make sure that we get it through in between the tension discs. It's very important to make sure that it's pulled through there, and I'm going to now put the thread through the secondary hole just there. So the thread is now wrapped in under the tension, quite lovely. And bobbins over here. Now I did mention before we got this little cutter here, so I'll show you how that works first. I can actually just pull the thread under there and cut it, and that thread clamps it and holds it in place for when we next need to wind a bobbin. One of the good things about this system is the bobbin winder can run at the same time as the sewing machine is sewing. So if you're preparing a bobbin for the next job, you can put whatever color on here and wind a bobbin while you're doing the previous job, which is great. So let's see how we actually then take this thread across to the bobbin. Now the best way to do it is wind a few times around the bobbin in this direction, and then take this thread and wind a few times around the bobbin in the other direction. And that kind of locks the thread in. And then just pull that slack back there, don't get it caught under the blade. Pull that slack back, and that will start winding for us. Now if you do, as I have got, a little bit of a tail sitting there, it's a good idea just to trim that off. We don't want that tail. And all I've got to do now is engage the bobbin winder. I haven't threaded the machine because this is the first bobbin I'm winding on this machine, and I do need to run the machine to make the bobbin winder work. So what I'm going to do, on the back of the machine, there is a lever for lifting the presser foot. So we'll just lift that up and it sits out of position. I'm going to remove this original, that's the original little stitch out they had on the machine from new. Again, this is a brand new machine, never used it before. So I've got the presser foot in the up position, and I'm now going to run the machine pretty much at full speed to wind the bobbin. So you'll be able to see how quickly this does wind. And if our camera's got that unfocused, we can do that now. So there we go. And at the same time, we might even see, I don't know if we can see on the oil cap here, but we can see the oil splurting up there. That's the pump genuinely pumping the oil around. Now let me stop there for a minute. As this fills, it will fill and push the bobbin winder and disengage it. I don't need to wind a full bobbin right now, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to put a little bit more on there. But I can see the oil is pumping, the machine's sounding great, the bobbin is winding. If I only wanted to do half a bobbin, all I've got to do is flick that lever, take the bobbin off the system, cut that thread just there, and I now have my half wound bobbin that I'm going to use ready to go. So let's have a look at how you load the bobbin. So this is a standard industrial bobbin case. Again, we carry these in stock, loads of them, and the bobbin is an L style. So you'll notice on the bobbin case there's a kind of a little chamfered edge where the thread comes into, and the thread basically comes in so as that when you're looking at it like this, it rocks into there, back under the tension. And if we look at the bobbin case in this position in our hands, the bobbin will spin clockwise. That's what you want to see. There is a little spring in the bobbin case that prevents overspin of the bobbin, but all we want to do now is probably leave a few inches, 2 or 3 inches of thread, and once you are quite used to this, it's very easy to put the bobbin in without even looking at it. It's kind of like riding a bike. Once you know how to do it, it's simple. What I do like to make sure is that our needle is in the up position, so I just heel back on the foot control, and that actually brings the needle up. The needle is completely up out the way. Now I do stress to you, when you're loading a bobbin, take your foot off the pedal, because if you're pushing this into the bobbin case and you have your foot on the pedal and you inadvertently tweak on your foot or something happens, the machine will go, and you don't want your hands in around there if the machine starts to run. Some people would feel even more safe to switch the machine off, so there's no chance that you can accidentally run the machine while you're loading the bobbin. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm quite comfortable to load the bobbin without switching it off, but I do not have my foot on the pedal, and even I follow that rule. So just be mindful of that. And I'm just going to click that into place. So there, the bobbin is now all inserted and ready to go. Now we need to thread the needle. So, same thing, I've got the same thread up here. I've already threaded it through the eyelet above the spool, and now it is just a case of bringing down the thread, putting a nice clean cut on it, get rid of that little bit, and we have this little first option, which is a thread guide with 3 little holes on it. Now, you don't need to put it through all 3 holes, but part of the purpose of looping this around is it kind of helps to take any twist, unwanted twist out of the thread and stabilize the thread for entry into the machine. I generally find using 2 of those holes is fine. If I had a really slippery, twisty thread that kind of has a mind of its own, I would probably put it through all 3, but on a quality, stable thread like this, you don't need to. We then also have these little guides here, and again, we just twist it in, or put it into one and then twist it around through the second one. And this is a pre-tensioning device, so it's a very soft little tension, and we just make sure the thread is hooked into between the 2 discs, and then we come down through the hole just at the bottom here, and then through this tension here. Now, I've got my presser foot in the fixed up position because I use the lever on the back to hold it up. Now, when the presser foot is up, that means the tension is open. That's these discs is open, there's no tension on the thread. When the presser foot is down, they're closed. You must always thread your machine with the presser foot in the up position, otherwise you may not get the thread into the tension assembly because the discs are still closed. So I happen to know that I can easily pull that into there. The thread has now entered the tension discs. We now need to pick up the check spring, as we've done there, come down under the bar just there, and we can come up into this little eyelet here. This eyelet is also an adjustable eyelet when we're using heavy threads and we need to control the thread and the stitch a little bit more. We can adjust that forward and backwards, but there's no need for you to deal with that right at the moment, because no need for me to deal with it because I'm only using a standard thread. I then come up and make sure the thread goes into the take-up lever. Now you'll notice it's not a slotted lever, it's got a hole. And again, we're on a high-speed machine. The last thing we need is the thread coming out of the take-up lever, which can happen on slotted levers on high-speed machines, so we don't want that. We then come down and click into the first guide there, the second guide, down and in around that little pigtail guide there. And then there is a hole on the front of the needle bar, so we go into there. And then we've got to thread the needle from left to right. So unlike most of your home machines where often you're threading from front to back, it's left to right. And that's also something to remember when you replace the needle on these, because they're a round shank needle. The scarf of the needle needs to be on the right and the long groove on the left. So that's important, and we may even focus on that a little bit more a little bit later on. Now, I did mention this little guide. It's a finger guard. I personally would take it off, but I'm going to leave it on just for a minute while I thread this needle. So all we need to do is thread from the left to the right. There we go, so the needle is threaded. I don't really need to worry about drawing the bobbin thread on this machine. As long as I've threaded the bobbin correctly and it's only got a small tail on it, it's fine. So we'll take a piece of, I've just got a piece of standard white fabric here. And again, this is a brand new machine and I'm using a different thread to what they set up in the factory. So we'll put this presser foot down and we'll run a stitch and see how our stitch looks. I'm going to set my stitch length to about 3.5 millimeters, and I'm happy with that. The machine, nothing else I'm going to touch at the moment. I am going to now just hit my pedal and see how this all stitches. The further I push down, the quicker that's going to sew. Now, this is an underbed thread trimming machine, so when you finish your seam, it will cut the thread for you. You can choose to turn that off if you don't want to use it, and to turn it off, you would just hit this little scissor button and the little scissors would disappear. You'll never want to do it because it's such a good feature. So to trim the thread, all I've got to do on my foot pedal is heel back. So heel back on my heel, lift my foot, and it's now trimmed the thread for me. And so there's a stitch. It's not too bad. I might just give that a little bit more tension on the top. Again, I'm using a different thread to what the machine was set on out of the factory. And that's what a tension is for, adjustable tension. So let's just see how that goes now. Now notice I've got really good control, and notice that it also has a needle stop position. So it's always stopping with the needle just in the work there. And I can pivot around by lifting my foot control. And when I get to the end of the seam, just heel back on the foot pedal and it trims the thread for you. If I want to do a reverse stitch or a back tacking stitch at the start of a seam, I would just start sewing and then hit this little lever on my right, and that will give me my back tacking stitch. And now we have back tacked at the start and the finish of the seam. Got a great looking stitch there. So it's really simple. There's nothing much more to it, but what you will find when you first get to use a machine like this is the smoothness and the power and the ability to sew through just about anything is just amazing. Now looking at other settings on the machine, so as I mentioned, it's got a needle up-down position. So in other words, when it stops, you can have it stopping with the needle in the up position or the down position, and it's just a matter of touching that button, and that will show you on the screen. Again, I mentioned before, you've got your scissors here, so if we turn the scissors off, it means the trimming function is switched off and it will require that you take the thread out and cut it yourself. Generally speaking, I suspect you'll leave that on. This gives you a slightly slower start up, so the first couple of stitches are a bit slower to help you just pick up the seam and make sure it's collected the bobbin thread and started sewing straight away. I generally leave that on. And then you've got these two buttons which really just control the speed. Now this will sew right up to 5,000 stitches per minute. That's very, very fast. Unless you're a really, really experienced user, you won't set it at that. I find most people who are fairly new to industrials will probably set it down to around about 2,500 stitches, which is still really quick. If you consider a standard home machine is going to run at around about 1,000 stitches per minute top speed, this is fast. In fact, to give you an idea of what that might look like, that's 2,500 stitches per minute. So that's a comfortable speed for anyone, I think. There's a few little programming options there. I'm not going to dig into that because they don't really do much on this machine. This machine is all about having your speed set, having your needle up and down or your trimmers on, and having a beautiful stitch formation. And one of the things, and this is probably one of the demonstrations that everyone goes, oh my goodness, that is so good, is stitching, the ease at which it stitches over heavier fabric. So I've got a little reasonably heavy denim cuff here, and typically you might find if we had that, in fact I might simulate this on screen on the machine. So let's imagine we've got a hem, we've folded this over, and so we've got quite a heavy hem there. That's reasonably thick, and you would know if you've ever done this. I'm sitting at the side of the machine too, guys, so give me a little bit of latitude here as I try and get this under. I can't sit in front of the machine, so we're just going to fold this hem over and pop that down and just get this under here. And imagine we're sewing down over this heavy hem. You know on a home machine how difficult that can be. Hopefully the camera's got this. I'm going to keep my fingers out the way. It's just like a hot knife through butter. You don't even notice it. It's just sublime. So you can understand why in alteration stores and dressmaking stores they have an industrial machine do all this sort of thing, because it's so much easier. Heel back and it trims the thread for you, but it just climbs up over those heavy seams beautifully. And of course, if you were sewing on lightweight fabrics too, it's just as beautiful. As long as you've got the right needle, you might want to back off your foot pressure so as you don't have as much pressure on the fabric. But it'll handle lightweight fabric, heavy fabrics. As I said earlier, if you want to do leather or vinyl, absolute piece of cake. Beautiful for bag making because, and here's one of the big reasons you will go to an industrial machine. They have a narrow feed pattern. And that means the presser foot is narrower. And that means that when you're sewing something like a bag or an intricate area where you need to get in close, maybe you're putting piping in or you're doing some binding or whatever, having that narrower foot means you can get closer to where you need to be. And it also means, because there are so many different feet available for an industrial machine, and we carry a huge range of aftermarket feet. There's left and right zipper feet, there's narrow center zipper feet, there's compensating feet, there's roller feet, there's rolled hem feet. There are all sorts of amazing feet. In fact, I've got a little box of goodies here, and this is just some of them that we carry. I won't go through them all, but if you go to our website, look up industrial presser feet, you'll see it, and we've got good images. I mean, for example, this is an adjustable zipper foot that gives a center left or right position, and it can be adjusted while it's on the machine. Another common one, and one that is really popular, are these roller feet. So again, they just screw on. You undo this screw on the side here, screw this one on, and it's got little rollers underneath it for doing some of your more difficult fabrics. And Teflon feet, yeah, the list goes on. This video is not a foot video, so just to let you know though, but you've got options, and that's important. So look, that is essentially the VMA V-A2S. Echidna is certainly proud to be the distributor for these products in Australia. We've had great success with them. The prices are amazing, so I won't quote it now because this video is going to hopefully be up for a long time. Go to our website, check out the model, and you'll see the pricing is just incredible. You'll wonder why you haven't done this earlier, for sure. So I hope that is helpful for you, and if you have any questions at all, as usual, get in touch with us the normal ways. Until next time, happy sewing.